Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. You are in MBL309, which is Speeding Mobile Development with Cross-Platform APIs. My name is Peter Heinrich, and I'm a technical evangelist with Amazon.com. I come from a long background, actually, of game development, though, so you may find that a lot of my portion of this talk has a slight game focus. That's not to take away from mobile development in general, because the services we're going to talk about are actually useful across a broad genre of type of application. I'm joined today by Sourabh-Ahuja, who's VP of Android and cross-platform development at Glue Mobile. And he's going to be talking about one specific service called WhisperSync for games. The reason you're here is probably because you do some kind of mobile development, and you recognize that speed to market is absolutely critical. So support services like the ones we're going to be discussing today can be very, very helpful when you're trying to get your game to market as fast as possible. And besides, you have more important things to work on than synchronizing data or dealing with achievements and leaderboards. So what can we do for you? Well, if you've been in the mobile space for any length of time, you know that customer engagement is absolutely critical to your success. The longer somebody's in your game, the more time you have with them, the more likely it is for them to make an in-app purchase or follow up the initial outlay with an additional purchase later on a new game. You also want to make the customer experience as smooth as possible. So, for instance, one of our primary customer contacts revolves around save game data and moving from device to device, or moving on to a new device, or replacing a lost device, and not having the game data follow them to their new device. So we can help you in a couple different ways. We can help you move your data between devices and remove the burden of dealing with the network connectivity and whether or not a device is online or offline, multiple pushes from different devices and resolving data conflicts. We can also try to help with some of the engagement issues. So by providing achievements and leaderboards, we can raise the amount of time that users spend in your game. And we also have some other services that are not directly related to game development, such as A/B testing, which allows you to tweak the applications while they're in development and also when they're live in the field. And that's actually one of the aspects of A/B testing that I'm going to talk about today. So with that, I'd like to introduce Sourabh, who's going to come up and talk a little bit about WhisperSync for games.
Hi, I'm Sourabh-Ahuja, the VP of Android and cross-platform development for Glue Mobile, which includes Amazon App Store. And this one's missing my notes. So I'll give you a quick intro of Glue. We make free-to-play, high-end 3D action games, a lot of first-person shooters. So speaking of high-end, as you guys all know, we're always pushing the limit on these devices. We get random crashes. Sometimes people lose their progress or the game gets corrupted, doesn't launch for them again. As our brains are programmed by a popular OS, people will first try to restart the device. And then if that doesn't work, they will try to uninstall and reinstall the game. And that's when, if you don't have their data backed up, they're going to lose their progress. They're going to be very mad. Some of the Korean reviews could be pretty mean. So to avoid hurt feelings, we invested heavily since launch in WhisperSync to minimize and eliminate this problem, as well as offer seamless gameplay experience to the users to take their saved game from one device to another device. So in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about how to add WhisperSync to your games easily and quickly, and with some tips and tricks of what we've learned along the way. Let's see. All right. This notes didn't make through. All right, so there are 3 important parts to WhisperSync. There's the downloading of the data from the cloud, there's uploading, and then there's conflict resolution if user was using multiple devices. So I'm going to start here with downloading, which is the first thing you're going to do when you launch the game. So you launch the game, you call WhisperSync synchronize, and that's for for the downloading. For downloading, I'm going to talk about the 1x and 2x, both versions of WhisperSync, but I highly recommend that you guys all use 2x. If you have your games on 1x still, I have a last slide on talking about how you can transition to 2x. So with 1x, there was this one multi-file synchronized API call. It will back up all the files which you have in the internal memory, and that's what it will download on first launch if you went to a different device. And there's a conflict strategy which you can set to auto, and it will try to do everything on its own. So there is a disadvantage to that because you could have files which you don't want to be backed up, but you had no control on that. So WhisperSync 2x solves that problem. You have a data type called game data map, which is of the type key value pair. And that's what you want to use. If that's how your save data is modeled, it works perfectly. Ours is not. Ours is a bunch of binary files. So we figured out a way how to use syncable strings for our binary files. So what do you want to save, or what are you downloading? It's the developer string plus your save game, your raw game data, which is base 64 encoded into a string. So synchronize on launch, you get all your save game launched into the game as if the save game already existed. User is where he left off on his first device. Moving on. So uploading is a lot more fun, and there's a lot more action in uploading. And this deck is also a little bit older, so I'm going to go to the flowchart first. So as you can see, the first thing you want to start with is sync the developer string. What is a developer string? This is what you really want to pick carefully. This is what tells the user where he is in the game. So first thing you try to upload through WhisperSync is a developer string. If there is a conflict, you show a prompt to the user, which is the developer string, which says you're on level 2 or level 4. Do you want to pick what you have locally? If he says local versus server, if he says local, you take what's local there on his device and you stomp over what's in the cloud, and then you start the game. If he picks cloud, then you take what is on the cloud, you put it in the local save game, and then you start the game. So now I'm going to go back since this is how I have it here. So what are you downloading? What are you uploading? Is the developer string and the raw game data. The raw game data, like I said before, is base 64 encoded. So it's the syncable string, but you're not using the nice features which come with WhisperSync 2x. So like I said before, if your save game is already modeled in the key value pair format, then you should read up the documentation on the Amazon's developer page, and it will show you how it will auto-resolve conflicts for every key value pair. So when do you want to upload data to the cloud? Every logical save point in your game. When user has accomplished something new, you want to push that so he doesn't miss that out on his other device, or if he uninstalls. And lastly, when you exit the game, make sure you call flush so there's a forced save and everything is backed up. All right. So now there's a little piece of code here which explains the same thing which I just talked about. First thing you do, you try to take the cloud developer string and write the local one on top of it. There are WhisperSync callbacks. As soon as you do that, you're going to get a callback called on data uploaded to cloud. In that callback, you check for conflict. If there is a conflict, you then show the prompt to the user, and the user says use cloud data, then you stomp over the local values with the cloud, you stomp over the save data, and the developer string cloud, you say conflict resolved, start the game. And if he picks local data, then you do the reverse. Very simple, very straightforward. So talking about developer string, this is the key to the conflict resolution and the key to the messaging to the user. So you want to pick the right data for your developer string. Now, with the game data map structure, you don't even have to use developer string, because if you do key value pairs, you can let the conflict resolve itself if you're using syncable integers and all that. But we don't do that. We are actually using developer string and saving it as a key value pair in the game data map itself. So what is suitable for developer string? Something which changes only in one direction, as in it can go up or go down all the time, not in both directions. So like player's level, mission, and experience points. What you want to avoid is this currency and other things, because when you're going to show it to the user, he should be able to tell which one he wants. Where was he farther down the line? So now actually I have an example from one of our popular games, Frontline Commando. All of our games have WhisperSync now. So you see here, I was playing, so if you're anyone like me, you have a lot of Kindles. And so you play on one device. I started off in this device, I got to level 2. Then I put that device down, went to my other device, picked up from level 2, and got to level 4 on that device. But then when I came back on this device, I was trying to stomp over my save from level 4 on the first device. As you can see, like I said, I have a lot of Kindles, third Kindle. So at this point, user is shown a prompt to say, which save do you want to preserve? Because there's a conflict, you are on this device, you're on level 2, but then what I have backed up on the cloud, on WhisperSync, it's on level 4. User makes his choice, says, I want to take the latest one, I want to go and stomp over the local data and take level 4. There he is, the game restarts, loads in his data for level 4, he had a lot more swag, he's happy. Now customer care complains, we're happy. So in summary, WhisperSync works, it works pretty well. If you have binary files like we do, you can use the base64 encoding. It's very simple, easy to implement. This gives user the control versus trying to auto-resolve the conflict, which could get tricky. User might get confused. It's like, oh, my currency was this much, now is this much. What happened? Did I get robbed, or was the developer actually trying to help me? It works offline, so if he's not connected, it will, when it does get connected, it will automatically try to push the data to the cloud, so you don't have, user doesn't have to know anything. It's very seamless. So with that, all of our games at Glue are built with Unity. So one of the things I would like to share is the tips and tricks, which took us a little bit to figure out, was when you launch the game the first time and you never had the game on this device, and you detect that you had played on some other device, and you want the user to start off from that point, so you get the data through WhisperSync. Now, because the callbacks are asynchronous, we were kind of forced initially to restart the game to avoid any kind of corruption, like I start fresh. I already created the new fresh save game for this guy, and then now the WhisperSync is giving me something and it gets confused. So the way we did that was we halted all save game progress, so we kind of forced it to be synchronous, wait for the data to come back, and then just load into the game normally. And it works, it's seamless, the user doesn't even realize that he never actually played on this device, his save game is back. And lastly, people who are using WhisperSync 1x, there are handy tools provided by Amazon to switch over to 2x on your fresh launch of the game and you do your update. Since the 2x brought in the game data map data structure, when you're going to check, when you get the new cloud data is available. If the developer string is null, you know that there is cloud data, but it's not 2x data. So you make those API calls, which are there to, you can retrieve a single file, which was saved as a 1x file, or you can retrieve multiple files, and then you translate them into the 2x format and then push it back. And with that, I will like to hand it back to Peter, who's going to take a deeper dive into other GameCircle features.
Great. Thanks, Sourabh. OK, so with WhisperSync for Games, you can worry less about actually saving the data, concentrate more on the actual implementation of the game details that you really care about. So what if we could help you engage the players as easily as we can help you transfer the data between the devices? Well, it turns out that WhisperSync is actually part of a larger service that we offer called GameCircle, and includes leaderboards and achievements, all of which are free. And all of these services work across multiple platforms and device families. So they all work across Android, Kindle Fire, of course, and iOS. So first of all, why do you care about engagement? I don't think this is rocket science. I think most people understand that it's incredibly important to monetize your users. That is, in order to monetize your users, it's incredibly important. And part of the reason is because most of the purchases that your customers will make are actually repeat purchases. So more than half, actually, are a purchase from somebody who's already bought something from you. And what might surprise you is how late in the game they do that. So more than 60% actually make that secondary purchase or subsequent purchase after the first week. So obviously, it's important to keep your users as long as you can. And in fact, a really surprising amount of the money that you make comes far, far after the user has installed the game. So a month later, you're still picking up about 35% of your purchase. So clearly, retention is critical to your revenue, and engagement is critical to retention. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing is to keep your game front and center and display it prominently. And so on the Kindle Fire, for instance, we have the Games tab, and it shows the achievements and the connections to your friends who are playing the game, and your standing in relation to them. It also really helps to encourage friendly competition and highlight relative performance, as I mentioned, with the people that you play with, or with a global population of players. And it provides users an incentive to continue to play in the game or interact with your application and improve their standing. It's also good to reward completion. So, you want to give the user a sense of accomplishment. You give them a little reward whenever they complete a particular objective. And you want to make it clear in that process what they should shoot for next and what they're attempting to achieve. This basically encourages players to continue to the next level, which is exactly what you want because, again, the longer they're in the game, the better they'll be in the long run for monetization purposes. So is there a drop-in service that you can add to your application or game and just get this? Not necessarily, but we can give you a head start. So GameCircle, as I mentioned, gives you the leaderboards, gives you the achievements, and it provides automatic integration with Game Center as well, so you don't have to, there's not a lot of extra overhead. You can make a single call and update both services at the same time. And as I mentioned, works across several different platforms. So how do you get started? Well, first, let me give you a little background about GameCircle, just so you understand the data model and how we think about it. First of all the GameCircle data is actually stored in the cloud. So you're benefiting automatically from the AWS backend, the scalability, the availability. And because it's in the cloud, we give you the ability to write the data once and automatically propagate that data throughout across all the devices that a user may be using to play your game. And again, like WhisperSync for Games, as Sourabh mentioned, you don't have to worry about network connectivity or multiple updates from multiple devices because the service itself actually is resolving conflicts for you and queuing updates when the device is offline. The other nice thing about having the data online is that that data can be shared between apps. So this is great if you've got a high definition and standard definition version of your game. For instance, you want both versions of the game to utilize the same achievements and leaderboards. Because that data is globally accessible, multiple games can access it. Of course, the flip side of that is because it's globally accessible, there has to be some kind of protective process in place, or there has to be authorization and authentication to prevent random access of your data. So we actually allow you, obviously, to specify which apps in particular have access to the game data that you set up in the cloud. And you indicate which apps are able to read and write to specific achievements and leaderboards, or sync data to a common WhisperSync data store. And then GameCircle actually enforces these rules by authorizing submissions only from those approved apps and authenticating each update. So we want to verify, obviously, that each one comes from a bona fide app that you've approved. So how does it do this? Well, GameCircle uses security profiles, which are stored in the cloud, just like the data. And each is associated with a different set of back-end services or back-end data. And some of those may include GameCircle data, but not all. It just kind of depends on how you set it up. For this purposes of this discussion, obviously, we want to talk about the GameCircle data that you want to protect. And each of these security profiles can generate API keys, which grant access to the protected resource. And as I mentioned, apps can share access, but they actually use a different key. So the security profile is used to generate a separate key for each app, giving you visibility and control over specific access rules between apps. And you can also generate a separate key, or you would generate a separate key for a version of your app running on a different device. So the keys basically segregate your different SKUs of your application. So in order to do this, there are a couple steps. First, we have to enable access on the server, which means that we're going to create a security profile on our dev portal. We need to make sure that there's actually GameCircle data associated with the security profile that we set up. And by extension, we have to associate specific apps that you want to provide access to that security profile and the GameCircle data underneath. So I'll take you through this actually step by step. I'll see if this is working. Oh, okay, here we go. I think I have to log in again. Straightforward. So we're going to go to our developer portal. Okay, so I've got a couple games that I've already registered with the developer portal. I'm going to add a leaderboard and achievement to my handy-dandy snake game. I'm sure you've never heard of the snake game before, but I'm going to create one here. And so the first step is we're going to create a security profile. Which I did. Oh, okay, I'm ahead of the game. Awesome. So basically, all I had to do to create this was give it a name, a description, and then it will automatically, or it has automatically generated a client ID and a client secret. Oops. Now, I logged into this developer portal just using my Amazon developer account, which is super easy to get. You can actually log in with your regular Amazon account if you probably have an Amazon account if you're at this conference, but if you don't, that's also easy to set up. And then to create a corresponding developer account, we're just going to ask you for a little bit extra information about your business, primarily for tax purposes, so that when you sell your app on our store or you sell in-app purchase items, we want to be able to know how to pay you. So it's pretty straightforward. But I'm going to create another security profile just to illustrate how simple this is. I just click the big Create Security Profile. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so the second step is to associate this security profile with some actual GameCircle data. And the way you do that is you simply click over to the GameCircle tab, and you can see a list of security profiles that are available to me. The snake game that I created earlier and the one I just created. We'll go to the snake game and say, it definitely has GameCircle data. And now it's added to the list here. It has this unique identifier, and you can see that there's a column for leaderboards, achievements, an icon gallery, and we have a sandbox so that you can whitelist users so that they'll be able to access draft versions of your achievements and leaderboards. So if I want to create a leaderboard, I would click here, etc. And then finally, I want to make sure that the game itself, this is just saying that the security profile has GameCircle data associated with it, but I also want to make sure that the game itself has access to that security profile. So I go to the game, click Security Profile, and associate it with the profile I just created. Now this is not a reversible action, and it's also important to remember that multiple apps can access a single security profile, but not the other way around. So once you've attached your application to a security profile, it's basically accessing that GameCircle data. You can't then attach it to some other GameCircle data. Okay. So we've got it now enabled on the server side. Now we're going to actually turn it on in the client. And there are some steps associated with this. So first thing we need to do is we actually need to compute the MD5 of the certificate store that you're going to sign your application with. This is actually just for Android. If you're using iOS, then the MD5 isn't really necessary. You'll just be using the bundle identifier. So it's a little simpler on iOS. But for the benefit of argument, we're going to work on the Android version here. And then we're going to use the security profile that we just created in conjunction with the MD5 to generate an API key specific to that application. And then finally, we'll go ahead and add that API key into the application project so that it will get submitted each time we make a request to GameCircle. So the first step, computing the MD5 signature, and we have a couple different options here. We can either inspect our debug key store directly using a key tool, command line utility that comes with a JDK, and just basically grep the output and look for the line that says MD5, and you'll see it's the last line there. Or if we've already signed an application, we can extract the certificate that we use to sign that app and basically do the same thing, and you'll see that those two things should result in the same value. So in order to generate the certificate, in order to generate the app-specific API key, we're basically going to go to, I like the switcher, it's kind of cool. We're basically going to go to the security profile that we created, go to the API keys, and we'll say we want to generate one. And we're going to call it the snake game. We'll say this is the standard definition version for Kindle Fire, for instance. And then this might be something like, let's say it's Amazon example snake. And then the signature that we would use would come directly from this value that we generated, which I'm not going to type in. But, I don't think, yeah. But we can also look at, let's see, we'll go back. So here's one that we've already generated. We've specified a signature, the package, and then this key is what we're going to want to incorporate into our project. And the way we do that is we simply create a new file. It's going to be called API key.txt. It lives in the assets subfolder, and we just cut and paste that. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so that was the biggest stumbling block. That's actually literally the most complicated part of the whole process, setting up the authorization and the authentication. And with that out of the way, it really becomes a super simple matter to actually integrate leaderboards and achievements. So first thing we're going to do is set up a leaderboard in the dev portal so that, as I mentioned, it's going to be stored in the cloud. So you want this leaderboard to be accessible from all locations. And we'll go to the dev portal, set up a leaderboard, and then add the code in the application to actually access it. Again, really straightforward. We already saw how we set up GameCircle here. We're simply going to go to leaderboard and add a leaderboard. And there are a few things that we need to supply. We have to provide a leaderboard ID, which indicates how you're going to access this from within your application. We'll provide an icon. We'll provide a title, so we could say high score. Oh, look, it's like we've done this before. Best score so far. We'll call it points for now. And we need to select an icon because obviously this is going to actually be displayed to users. So we're going to upload some icons that we can draw from, which is nice because you can upload multiple icons at a time. So for instance, here's a whole bunch of icons. And just drag and drop them. It automatically generates some icon IDs for us based on the titles. Click Save. It's thinking. And now when I create this leaderboard, I can select one. So we'll say, like, not very representative of a high score, but why not? Let's see. We could say most monsters killed, something like that. Now I've got a leaderboard, and you notice, first of all, that this second column here, it's in draft mode. So whenever you add a new leaderboard, it automatically enters that mode. It's not globally accessible to everyone yet. That allows you to try it out, make changes. You can also reset scores for people who actually have access, so it's nice when you're doing testing. It won't become globally visible until you click this and click Start Publishing. You can also add additional languages, so you can translate super simply. Boom. And then if I want to change the text, I can just click right there, and it's independently publishable, so you don't have to publish your internationalized versions at the same time. You can roll them out independently. Okay, so now once we have the leaderboard up there, we want to enable access to at least some people, so we can go back to the GameCircle configuration screen, and you'll see that there's this Add a Nickname link. This is where we can add nicknames for any of our users to gain access. So I could add myself, if I could type my own name. And now this is actually a GameCircle ID, so when I log in with a Kindle Fire or play on an Android device or an iOS device that I've used with GameCircle before, then I'm going to be assigned, or I can obtain a user ID of my choice, and this is the name that I would add to the whitelist. So now anytime I play this game, I will actually be able to see and post scores to that leaderboard, even though the general population won't, which is great because when you create your leaderboards, you don't necessarily want to create every leaderboard right up front. You may have additional leaderboards that you roll out later with later additions to your game. Oops. Okay. So once we've got the leaderboard up, it's available on the dev portal. It's accessible by at least some people. We can go ahead and actually add the code to our application to submit a score to the leaderboard. And it's basically one line, really. There's this line. Let's see if I can highlight it. Nope. Okay. Highlighter. I think I can. There. Okay. It's basically these two lines together. So I get a pointer to the leaderboard client, which is accessible off the GameCircle object, and then I just call the submit score. I pass the user or the leaderboard ID that I specified when I created it on the dashboard and provide the score value. The score has to be strictly increasing, so we ignore any updates that of value less than or equal to the existing value. Now you'll see that there's some code under that where I set a callback, and that's really completely optional. Because we handle all the network connectivity for you and deal with retries and everything like that, there's no real need for you to respond to any specific error conditions. But if you're interested in observing the service in action or determining where it is, then you can provide a callback and be notified of its state. There are a couple other APIs associated with leaderboards, including being able to retrieve the current player's rank on any one of them. You can obviously get a list of all the leaderboards associated with your game. And you can also retrieve a list of other users on that leaderboard based on certain time filters. So you can retrieve the daily highs, the weekly highs, or all-time highs. Oh, you have a question? So the question was, can you determine if someone has passed you on the leaderboard and get notifications of when that happens? At this point, you can't do that.
What about tiered leaderboards, since for functionality similar to StarCraft or League of Legends?
Not yet, but we recognize that this is a very useful feature, and we're always looking at making the customer experience better. So. And then finally, with leaderboards and achievements both, you have the ability to bring up a user interface component that will display all the leaderboards in order. And you can adjust the order on the dashboard just by dragging and dropping them. So achievements, very similar process. You would go through the dashboard to set it up, and you would provide an icon, a description. For achievements, actually, you provide a locked and unlocked version of the description, simply because obviously the user is going to be seeing an achievement to incent them to achieve some objective, and when they haven't achieved it yet, you want that descriptive text and icon to differentiate it from one that they've already obtained. So you're going to provide two versions of the title and description, and they might be things like, description and icon. They might be things like number of ships that you have destroyed, or number of you've destroyed. You should destroy 50 ships, and then once they've achieved that, it'll obviously change to you have destroyed 50 ships, or you're a ship-killing monster, or something like that. And then actually updating the progress, Again, very straightforward. It's a single line, update progress. And again, you're passing the the achievement ID, which you specify when you generate it on the dev portal, and a value between 0 and 100 inclusive. So that way you can provide incremental progress toward an achievement, and in the display, GameCircle actually shows a little bar graph showing you how far along you've progressed. Again, the callback is completely optional. So you can retrieve information about an achievement, such as all the relevant data about what it's called and the icon and that kind of thing. You can obviously get a list of all the achievements that are associated with your game, and again, you can show an overlay of the achievements. Achievement order is actually a little more important than leaderboard order, simply because if you provide them in the order that they could conceivably complete the storyline or something like that, then we will display the next achievement that's available as the next target, something that you should achieve next. Okay, so great. We have GameCircle out of the way. It's pretty straightforward to set up. It's very easy to integrate achievements and leaderboards. It's not rocket science. We're on our way to engaging the customer. But let's say I'm completely new to game development and I really don't know exactly how to tweak my game to make it fun. I'm still learning how to tune it. Maybe I'm experimenting with the difficulty level or the power-ups or sprite imagery or something like that. And so I don't know, that I'm actually releasing the final version of my game. For example, I release Snake and I get a whole bunch of complaints right away saying the snake is moving too slow or too fast, or there aren't enough apples, or who knows, something like that. Well, Amazon actually has a cross-platform service that can help you here too. And A/B testing is a very common and very well-known service, but not so much in the mobile space. It's particularly popular with web developers, and I don't think it's an unknown quantity. But when I talk to mobile developers, it's kind of oh, that's kind of interesting, but I don't really see how it would apply to me, or I don't understand how it would help me, because I would have to do multiple submissions in order to really make it work. Well, the way we've set up our A/B testing, you can actually run the tests even after you've submitted. So, for instance, our own internal studio, Air Patriots, has used A/B testing to great effect, great advantage on a couple different experiments, including whether or not we should even have in-game advertising, or whether we should provide shortcuts on the main menu to be able to provide specific power-ups, whether we should provide notifications on a 3-day schedule or a 7-day schedule, to encourage people to come back to the game. Basic questions like whether an easier level leads to more revenue because people play it more. We also tried an experiment with promotional imagery, where we basically threw up a little button that would take you to a screen showing other games by the studio. So in this case, we tested the imagery. The control is the one in the upper right, and we experimented with one that was just the Amazon with the little A character with the smile underneath. And what we found was that 47% of people actually preferred the control. So that had a better conversion rate than the test A. And this is about the easiest kind of A/B test you can run. You basically just throw up two versions. Part of your population sees one version, part of your population sees another version, and you can very quickly determine whether one or the other is more popular. So the A/B testing service supports this basic kind of test, but it also supports multiple variations, so A/B-N testing. It supports engagement reports and analytics. And the thing that I really want to talk about today is the launch facility. So this is something that's built in to the regular tests anyway, but you can use launches even without a test, which is kind of the cool thing. This basically allows you to instrument your apps or add knobs to your apps, changing the values after they've already been published, while they're in the wild, regardless of which app store they're published on. So it's kind of nice being able to tweak the behavior of your application after you've released it. You don't have to worry about resubmitting. So the launch surface offers a couple key features. First of all, you can control precisely exactly who's affected. You can also limit the customer impact so that you can scale these changes effectively and safely. And as I mentioned, the coolest feature, I think, is being able to make these changes even after the app is shipped. So how do we get started? Well, let's see, I can go back again. It's all about the dashboard. It's very straightforward. Go to the app, say Snake Game, and we'll add A/B testing. So you can see right away that we don't have any projects associated with this app. We do have some private keys, however, which we'll use to, we'll add these to our application project so that requests and submissions that we make to the service will be able to verify exactly who's making them and correctly collate all the data that we send it. But the first step is to add a project. So for instance, we could say background color. Oh yeah, there's a good example. We'll say, what is the best background color? Now at least we have an experiment. Sorry, we have a project. We don't have any experiments associated with it yet, but let's see. So initializing our project in our actual application basically amounts to calling, setting up some new credentials right here. Whoops. It's hard to do without a mouse. And then creating a new instance of the Insights, Amazon Insights. And then next, we're actually going to add an experiment. In this case, it's going to be a launch experiment, which means that we're going to set up some variables that we'll be able to use inside our application, but it won't necessarily be tied to specific performance or multiple variation tests. So we could say, here's the background color. We're going to say there's going to be a background color variable, and it'll start off as black. The new variation is actually going to be black too. It doesn't really matter yet because we're not making any changes. We'll save that and click Start. So now we have the project and experiment running in our application. And let's see here. We can now load that variation anytime we want. So in this case, I've set up some static string values in order to refer to the specific project names and the variables that I want to retrieve. So here's the project name. Here's another project name. You can use variable args to set up to retrieve multiple projects. And then I basically just make this call, get variations. I pass this callback with the onComplete method. And then once I'm in that method, that means, because this is an asynchronous call, obviously, I can retrieve the variables associated with a specific project and experiment. So in this case, the first project was something to do with acceleration, and I retrieve a specific variable. Actually, I think I even define what those variables are. So in this case, I just set the project name to acceleration, the variable to max acceleration. And then the same thing here. And you notice that I'm just setting these to variables that I can use within my application later. Now here's the really cool part. Once I've set all this stuff up, I've basically just created this variation, I can now change the value. This is where the knob comes in. I've published the application. It's using that variable to set up the variable, the background color. Now I can say, try something darker or lighter. And I'm just providing a name so that later on I can see exactly how I've modified the value over time. And I'll say the new variation is, let's say it's blue. And I'll send this to all customers. I've basically just changed that knob on that application. I'll click Start. This is going to modify everybody in the field, so it's live applications are going to be affected. So it's asking me for this confirmation. I'll say yes. And now the next time anybody runs their application, that variable will be retrieved with a different value. And again, I want to emphasize that this happens even if you've released on iOS or you've published in Google Play or whether you've obviously published in the Amazon App Store. Because it's cross-platform, you can run this test and run these launches and modify these knobs regardless of the market. So this is just a couple of examples of a few of the cross-platform services that we offer. GameCircle, obviously, offers WhisperSync, which allows for the data synchronization between devices. It also provides leaderboards and achievements to improve engagement and retention of your users. And then A/B testing gives you this facility that's not typically associated with A/B testing per se, of being able to make real-time modifications to your live apps using launches. But there are others. I mean, we also have mobile ads, we have device messaging using simple notifications with mobile push, and we also support web apps. That's it. So Sourabh and I will be here just off the stage. If you have any specific questions you want to follow up with us, we'll be here for a few more minutes. And thanks for coming.